Joining us now via Skype is Jonathan Pollock. He's a senior fellow for the Center for East Asia Policy Studies at the Brookings Institution. So, Jonathan, let's begin with economics and trade. Do you think both sides are closer or at least back on the same page when it comes to those particular ties? Has it recovered from where it was maybe 6 months ago?
Well, it's a first step in a process. Very frankly, I think China enormously overreacted to the deployment of THAAD. There were major economic reprisals directed against the ROK, and it really eroded a lot of confidence, including in the South Korean business community on dealings with China. Nonetheless, President Moon traveled to China now with many, many figures from the corporate sector. I think that there are good possibilities here, but it's going to take a little while, I think, to rebuild confidence and put things back on a steadier track.
A lot of deals signed, 7 memorandums of understanding. You mentioned THAAD. How big of an issue is THAAD between these two? Are they any closer to coming together on this issue with this visit?
Well, the best we can tell is that they are agreeing to disagree. They're not going to make a major issue of it here. There's clearly not a meeting of the minds that I can detect. This is something that South Korea has undertaken. It's something that South Korea sees very, very much in its own defense against North Korea. South Korea will try to provide assurances to China about what the THAAD deployment does and does not represent. All of this in the aftermath of the October 31st understanding that the two sides reached. I don't think either side is overplaying it. I think they're just trying to find a way to avoid what had become, very frankly, kind of a free fall in bilateral relations, which not only weakened the ties between China and the ROK, but very frankly was to the advantage of North Korea, which is only too happy to exploit these kinds of differences between other key actors.
So that being said, if the ROK, China, and other countries in the region can come to some sort of consensus or agreement on how to deal with the DPRK, does the region need anyone else from outside to face this issue of the nuclear issue there?
Well, you know, whatever regional actors can do, I think is very, very important. But it's inconceivable to me that the United States would not be involved in this process. There has to be the coherence of views, the commonality of opinions among all involved actors, because very frankly, the risks are very, very great here. I don't trivialize them for a moment. And a lot of the warnings and concerns are about the possibility that things could go from bad to much, much worse, including even some serious speculation about the possible use of force on the peninsula. This is where I think China and North and South Korea can, through a higher level of collaboration again, signal that, as they pointed out in the 4 principles that they are articulated today out of the meeting between President Moon and President Xi Jinping, that the highest priority is that war is simply not an acceptable option. So that's very, very important that these two countries, which have a critical position to play here, they are the ones who would be most directly affected by any kind of a severe crisis on the peninsula. That's a very important signal. They have to build on that. I'm heartened also in that context that Seoul and Beijing have apparently agreed to some kind of a means of crisis communication, if you will, a hotline. That will be potentially very, very important if we are going to avoid a major conflict.
All right, Jonathan Pollock, as always, we appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us.